Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. All right, OPP community, today we have a very special guest whom I'm excited to bring on. He's actually an Amazon best-selling author and has authored 2 books. The one I'm most excited to read is The Intent is to Grow. He is the founder of Balance the Bar initiative, and he's had a 14-year career in the NBA with the Philadelphia 76ers. He's the NSCA Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year nominee. And please help me welcome Mr. Jesse K. Wright. How you doing this morning, Jesse?
I'm doing wonderful, guys. Thank you so much for having me on here. I'm excited to have this conversation.
We're excited to have you. In case you didn't know, Ali's a big WWE fan. So he likes to introduce you like you're coming out in your flaming pink robe to thousands of people getting ready to wrestle.
I wish I had more LED lights in my background and intro music, but I wasn't prepared for that.
That's all right. We'll have to add. Well, we'll start adding that in the future, Ali. Give them some intro music, and maybe they can walk up on camera.
Jesse, I don't know, man. I feel like you could be a good WWE character. You got the smile going, a good build. Create someone.
I'm not sure about that. It's big on personality, which I think I'm a little shy of, at least for that level.
That's awesome.
Gotcha.
Well, welcome to the show, Jesse. We're excited to have you, and we're excited to have you kind of lead our community in your story a little bit today.
Good. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, this will be fun, guys.
So as a good strength and conditioning coach, you're understanding the importance of a good warm-up before we jump into the heavy lifting. And we're no different here, Jesse. We're going to warm you up, my friend. We can't just throw you into the shark tank. So get those muscles loose. We got to hear from you. We want to know, Jesse, if you're on an island for the rest of your life and you get one food to take with you, what's Jesse going to eat?
Oh, surprising. This one wasn't on your prep notes.
Yeah.
I am going right off camera. We had some good conversation about Pennsylvania, right? There's a Pennsylvania Dutch where I grew up in the eastern part of Pennsylvania, a small little French fry potato-ish category called a pierogi. If you guys have had those.
Oh yeah.
And that's my answer. I would go with pierogies for my deserted island dish.
Interesting. A pierogi.
Yep.
You got sour cream or ranch or ketchup? What do you take?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, can I have the sour cream with it? Yeah. Is that allowed? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's one food, basically.
Perfect. That's what I'm going with.
So you'll be carb loaded to try and escape the island.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Nice. All right, Jesse, question number 2 for you. And now this is an opportunity to create your own WWE character if you'd like. But if you could be one superhero, one that already exists like a Superman or Batman, or one made up like Super Jesse, with one superpower, who would you be and what would your power be?
Okay, another good one. I think I go Captain America. And I like that he started out as like an everyman, and they turned him into a superhero. So he kind of grew into the role. And the superpower I always thought would be really cool would be to be able to be invisible, right? Just kind of go where you want and listen in on what you thought would be valuable, and maybe have a little bit of mischief and have some fun without people knowing it and everything. I always thought that would be cool.
So you'd be kind of an adult superhero then, because you'd have some mischief in there.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
Like you'd be like Deadpool. So you'd be a rated R superhero.
There you go. Yeah. Keep it clean most of the time, but no harm in making it fun sometimes.
Yeah, that's good. Being invisible. And he was built up. So that's kind of what your career has done, right? You kind of built superheroes, strength and conditioning.
In a way, yeah. I've been very, very fortunate to work with a very high level athlete for the biggest part of my career. So yeah, you could phrase it that way for sure.
Yeah, I love it. That's exactly when you were saying. I was like, dang, you're pretty much living your superhero life. All right, one final warm-up question, Jesse. We're
Yep.
big on reading in our community and continuing to grow and challenge ourselves. So what book are you currently reading, and what is an all-time favorite?
Okay, so I literally just finished just this morning a book called High 10. It's another business parable type from a gentleman named Martin Rooney, another strength and conditioning
Oh
coach
yeah,
that
East Coast.
yeah, on the East Coast. Yep, and he's dove into writing as well. I don't even know the number of books that he's authored both training manuals and leadership type books and everything. So I just got done with that. It's a wonderful story about creating culture and sustaining a high performance culture in both sports and a business world. So that was amazing. And a favorite of mine, again, is kind of sticking with the parables and the self professional development and everything. A big fan of fish, and just that concept of a woman who was challenged with a new role in a difficult environment, and she figured out a way to flip it, to turn it into a success despite very challenging environment, some pretty difficult circumstances and everything. So I've always valued those types of stories. I think we all learn best. This isn't new. I didn't come up with this, but we all learn best from storytelling. And when you can take those professional development topics, those items that we all maybe can pluck from and build into our own lives, both professionally and personally, and you take that from a story, you can place yourself in those positions. Almost you can see yourself as the leader of a difficult office, or you could see yourself as the coach of a team that needs to grow and maybe dig out of a losing environment or something. I like those. I've come to identify those, identify with those very well.
That's awesome. It's funny you bring up Martin Rooney of all people. Ali, this is before your time, but when I was first starting in mixed martial arts, strength and conditioning was kind of behind the times as far as the growth of that sport and all the components of wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. Martin Rooney was one of the first guys that wrote a book. I was just trying to look for the name, Training for Warriors.
Training for Warriors, yep.
Because he's associated with Renzo Gracie.
Yes.
Yeah, so that
Oh,
was
how
like
cool.
we were like following those workouts way back in the day.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Small
No, and
world.
that's a great description too, because it was obviously a very I don't know if niche is the word, but the training at that point was basically you just do more of your martial art.
Right.
And obviously there's tons of great people doing work in strength and conditioning, right? And that supplementary approach to whether you're working on your anaerobic conditioning, your strength, your flexibility, mobility, to complement all of the skills that you learn just from training in the martial art. You're right. Around that time, there weren't a whole lot of people doing it. So Martin did very well in getting that information out there.
Yeah, he really took or helped elevate the sport of mixed martial arts from like a niche fighting to an actual athletic competition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you started seeing the growth of the fighters, because they just weren't skilled in a discipline, but they were true athletes. They had cardio and anaerobic capability and flexibility. And yeah, it was very interesting. Well, very cool. Are you into mixed
Yeah.
martial arts at all?
Superficially,
Yeah.
I respect every ounce of what those guys do, and I do have some friends and some colleagues that work in that space and train those fighters and everything. I'm not a guy that has to pay for every single UFC event or anything like that. I did get into the first season or two of The Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool when that started back. So call me a fan, but not a
Yeah.
huge fan. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So talk to us, Jesse. I'd love to know strength and conditioning. How was it? I would really like to know the mental side of it, because clearly if these athletes have made it to the NBA, they're elite amongst the elite. What would you say, top 0.5% of humans would ever make it to that level?
Yep.
How were you able to connect with them and get them to go even further, to separate themselves at that rare air?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're exactly right. The God-given genetic ability of an athlete that reaches that level of sports, not just in the NBA, but any professional athlete. I mean, it's again, you said 0.5%, it might even be less than that. It's just such a special person that reaches that level based on their natural ability. And then to answer your question, you take the work ethic part of it, the commitment to personal excellence part of it, which my small piece of that represented, the weight room and the conditioning world and everything you do to reduce your risk of injury and what you do with your sports medicine professionals, a physical therapist and everything. And that's all kind of bucketed into this world of professionalism, where obviously they're wired to want to play basketball, but there's a whole other set of activities or day-to-day tasks that a pro athlete does to grow their ability to be successful, their opportunity to be successful. And it's not just what you see, during the game, and it's not just the practice that people know. Most of those guys arrive an hour or two before the scheduled practice time starts, and they may stay an hour or two later. And there's a bunch of items, right, or things that they do to prepare for practice that gets them ready to really succeed on a high level. And one of those is the weight room, right? And you talked about the mental component. And I think the biggest thing is to get yourself in a position to have a regular, sustained commitment to it over the course of an NBA season for 6 months, 6 to 8 months, depending on how long you play between preseason and playoffs and everything, to show up every day and to make sure that you get a regular commitment to your scheduled training. And, don't get too high, don't get too low, but just know it's all part of the grind of the NBA season, that in order to stay healthy and to withstand the rigors of travel and public scrutiny of playing at night and all that stuff, that to take care of your body, both from showing up in the weight room and committing to the program, and then everything that comes with sleep and nutrition and recovery and everything, that there is a big mental component to that. And to be able to commit to it as a professional, to continue to do it over and over, even after losses, even after late arrivals, after flights and all that stuff, that's a big piece of it to be really successful.
How much did you have battles there? How much pushback would you get? Was there
a lot?
Was there one particular, and you don't have to tell us the name, but one particular player that you were like, oh man, we got to go after it again?
There's many more than one.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. If I had a coach tell me very, very early in my career, actually the very first pro team I worked for, that he looked right at me and said, look, if hard work is what got you to the NFL, you and I would be in the NFL right now, right? These guys are wired to be that way. And many of them are so blessed and so gifted that they don't really have to commit to off the field training early in their careers, right? As they develop, because they're just so much more talented than everyone else. So they may not have the best habits when they arrive in the NBA environment or the NFL or any other league. So there's a big process to teach them that, right? And you're going to butt heads sometimes when guys don't show. And if they do show, if they don't necessarily want to put the effort in that day, or, for some reason they're not willing to commit to the program that day. So you learn very early to fall back on building a relationship, right? And building trust and figuring out the way to get through to each guy that may or may not want to commit to what it is they have to do that day. And that's difficult. You can't treat everybody the same. Everybody's wired differently, and everybody gets motivated differently and are driven by different rationale and the why behind what they do. And you got to figure that out pretty early in order to work through those days where maybe they don't want to put the effort in, or they don't even want to show up. And they're there for sure.
I'm not going to lie, Jesse, when I saw you were the strength and conditioning coach for the Philadelphia 76ers, one of the first things I did and my research was start looking to see if you'd have been there with Allen Iverson, because he had the most famous rant about practice in the history of television.
Yep.
Ollie, did you see that? We'll have to
yeah.
We're talking about practice, man. We're talking about practice. And so I was just like, oh, gosh, this is perfect. So we'll have to throw that up as maybe a teaser for this episode as well.
You probably can't go, probably a month is accurate, maybe a couple weeks at a time in the Philadelphia area without seeing somebody with a t-shirt on with that quote or something that starts with "we talking about." And they may change the noun that follows that or something, but no, legendary press conference for sure. I actually, that press conference was before my time, but I worked with a handful of people that were there,
Yeah.
and kind of relayed the details of what led to that press conference. And
Were they just like,
afterwards.
what are we supposed to do?
Can't do much in that position now,
No.
especially when he's up there in front of the camera and everything. No, my first year with the team was the year we traded him to Denver,
Yeah.
right? And then we brought him back 4 or 5 years later for a short stint for a couple months. He was with the team and everything. And incredibly unique individual.
I got to tell you, though, he is one of my favorite all-time players.
Can never ever argue the heart that went into his game. And you talk about the word commitment to his team, despite an undersized athlete and playing through a number of different injuries. And just his style of play was one where again, his body isn't the type that would typically be able to absorb a lot of the contact that comes with the NBA game, but that never once kept him from driving to the rim and absorbing contact and continuing to push through it every night and showing up when his team needed him. Just a remarkable individual.
And what else I really appreciated about him is he seemed genuinely unique to who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I know probably like a guy in your position would be like, just conform a little bit, like just meet us halfway. But he, even at that level, he still stayed who he was.
Yeah. Now, maybe more so than, again, maybe not fair to say anybody ever in the NBA, but he's got to be in the top 5 of everyone's list of I am who I am, and you're not going to influence me. And it worked really well for him at the time. He influenced a lot of young players, whether it was from how he dressed or his attire or his approach to the game, his hairstyle, everything. He was such a unique icon, and he came along in the NBA at a time where they're I don't know if they were looking for a new identity, but he definitely created one, and a lot of people hopped on board. And it says a lot about his influence and kind of who he was as the individual that he clearly was going to be. Nobody was going to change that.
So Jesse, you mentioned something just a little bit ago about the foundational principle of building trust with some of these players before being able to have any type of influence as a strength and conditioning coach. And I believe that that's such a foundational principle to build any type of relationship, right? Is building that foundational trust. So when you're going into this atmosphere of these professional, naturally talented athletes who may not feel at some points in their career, like you were saying, that they need what you're offering, how was it that you were able to build this foundation of trust in order to go and execute on your career?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to honor what it is you're supposed to do and what it is you said you would do. And it's interesting. I say that because you're on a constant proving ground all the time. And whether, in 2006, I was new to the environment, right? And you always have new people coming in, whether you're bringing in free agents or rookies that you just drafted, or, there was a lot of turnover above my position for the team in my time. I worked for 5 different head coaches and 8 different general managers in that time. So those are people that, they come in above you and they hold your professional fate in their hands upon arrival. There's no obligation for them to keep the staff that they inherited, for sure. So what you learn pretty quickly is, on the topic of establishing trust and earning relationships and everything, that one of one of the best ways to do that is to be very good in your role. And when you commit to something, make sure that you continually show consistently over and over that you're a guy that does what it is you're supposed to do, or what he says he's going to do. And some of that is as simple and trivial and tied to the job as just, being where you're supposed to be in the weight room when you're for a scheduled appointment, right? Or for a scheduled time. And that seems matter of fact, but if you're constantly arriving late to those, you're not really perceived or viewed as a responsible professional. And these guys have a lot of demands for their time. So if you tell them a workout is going to be a certain amount of time, honor that, right? And do it. Don't keep them overtime where maybe they now miss maybe a public appearance, right? Which they have a lot of, or maybe it's as simple as just sending them to the basketball development coach because they have a shooting workout scheduled, right? And the strength and conditioning component can't run over that. And then there's a bunch of things. Each guy had individualized nutrition programs, and maybe they value a certain supplement that's helped them through their career, and to be able to seek out ways that you can constantly empower them that they can succeed and reach their own individual goals, which then leads them to greater team success. And when that happens, it leads to better contracts, right? And everybody wins and everything. But the day-to-day honoring what it is you say you are going to do and what it is supposed to do, that's woven into your role and everything, I think it's critically important to make sure you deliver on that. And then find some opportunities to over deliver as well, maybe exceed some expectations. And if you were supposed to set up a meal, right? A lot of times in that environment, you were one of my roles was with the team nutrition. I worked with our team dietitian, and eventually we hired a whole culinary staff when we built our new facility in New Jersey. And one of the things we did a lot was guys, especially like new free agents, would come in and they would like their own personal chef service, and they want to hire their own chef to fuel their performance and to make sure they're eating in the patterns that are going to help them as athletes. And what we would do is it could come in the form of like, oh yeah, we got a couple guys, here's a couple phone numbers and everything. But we would actually go above and beyond. I say this because I was part of a small team that did this, to make sure that not only do you link them up with their own chef, but you maintain a strong relationship with them. And you make sure that their eating environments, which they obviously are going to eat their dinners at home and a lot of lunches and even on off days and everything, that chef is preparing their foods in the manner that's in line with the nutritional goals that the team dietitian outlined. And that we give that chef a little bit of heads up of what we learned about what they like to eat, so that not only are they preparing it in a healthy manner, but it's food that they actually will choose to consume often. And just structuring that relationship so that you surround this athlete with a team of people that are invested in their health and their well-being, versus just passing them off like, oh yeah, we know a couple chefs in Philly, go ahead and call them. And that's what we did. So just a small example of a way to over deliver on something it is that I was personally asked to do as a strength coach, and then with the support of team members around us.
Yeah. I love how you're touching on principles that are foundational, not only in the professional world, but it sounds like a lot of things in cultivating trust and building a relationship with anybody, right? Integrity, accountability, honest communication, over delivering in some cases. So I'm really loving hearing that these transcend from your day-to-day human beings to all the way up to your professional athletes in the NBA. I want to circle back and rewind a little bit to your journey, Jesse, and how you made this dream of yours become a reality, and how this became a dream, because so many young men have dreams to make it as a professional athlete, right? And like we were just discussing earlier, maybe just 0.5%, so much of it, especially when it comes to NBA, NFL sports like that, so much of it is genetic, right? So much of it is something that you can't always just work towards. So for you, what experience in your life really led you to go the strength and conditioning route? And how did you get an opportunity to take that route to to the highest level?
Yep. So I was the undersized high school football player, right? And loved the sport, but realized I was small for the bodies that you're playing against and everything. So I actually got involved in the off season with a local powerlifting team, right? And the core of the members of the team were on the football team, and our high school coaches introduced us to a local power lifter, and he was a deadlift national champion, and he was about my size. He competed as like a 160, small, lean guy who's wired, got veins everywhere. Like, he was an impressive individual on many levels. He had his own supplement line, and it was the first time that I was introduced to a structured program for training that complemented what we needed to do for the football team. And it got my wheels turning, and I knew I always wanted to maybe, hopefully, stay involved in sports throughout a career. And then as I got introduced to this structured training, I started digging into the opportunities there, and, stumbled upon both strength and conditioning and physical therapy, and you have athletic trainers and sports medicine. And I kind of knew I wanted to be in that world. So, went to Temple University in Philadelphia for an exercise science degree. And again, this is kind of a, luck meets hard work type story, I guess. But what I got an opportunity to work for the football team at Temple University pretty early in my freshman year as a student equipment manager. So my start in high level athletics, I say this all the time, was literally doing athletes' laundry, right, and washing bags of jock straps and socks and all that stuff. Like, the young population doesn't wear jock straps anymore, but we can appreciate that. Maybe some of your older listeners, but that was the role, and you set up equipment, and you did laundry, and you wiped down helmets, getting ready for games and everything. But what it did, and kind of the bigger picture, bigger message, is it got my little toenail in the door with high level athletics. And once you're in the door, depending on how you carry yourself and how well you work and who you choose to network with and everything, you start to meet other individuals. And that was my story. I met some people that helped me move towards this strength and conditioning path. I remember working along with the strength and conditioning coach at the time. His name was Chris Hudak. He's one of my earliest mentor, and he was the head strength coach. And I was part of a team that set up all of his early morning workout drills. And I'm setting up cones, and you're there at 4:30 in the morning to set up for a 5:30 or 6 a.m. workout. And you're putting down bags, and you're setting up cones, and you're outlining the whole gym and all that stuff. And doing that type of grunt work led me to an opportunity to volunteer for him. And that led me to an opportunity to be an undergraduate assistant for him. And then that led me to an internship with the Philadelphia Eagles, and on and on and on, to where, again, an opportunity came up within the NBA while I was working with a private sports training company. They secured a contract with the 76ers, and I was placed in that contract as a strength and conditioning consultant, but I was kind of property of the team. So again, it's, this happens in all industries without a doubt, but for sure in sports, most of your coaches or personnel that end up kind of working in some of the higher level roles probably have a similar story where they got some type of maybe luck-based opportunity. And then you get yourself in that world, and you do whatever it takes to work hard and to earn people's favor, and to do a really good job in the role that you're asked to play. And when you do that and you put in your time, people are willing to refer you, and people are willing to recommend you as opportunities come up and everything. And that's kind of how I landed where I ended up.
Yeah, that's good. And that ties back to what you were expecting of the athletes. Like when you were talking about how did you earn the trust of the athlete? It's literally the same thing. We show up and we work. And I think that's one place where we struggle in today's world is too many people want to be at the top of whatever it is they're trying to do, whether it's sports, careers, but they don't want to start at the bottom. Like we're afraid of just doing whatever it takes to get some experience or to get in the door. And that's something we really preach to our community is the first step in being successful in almost anything is you just got to show up consistently. Mm-hmm. Right? Like if you don't show up, nothing good can happen.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And again, I think one of the key words there is consistently,
Yep.
because the stimulus to want to do something, right, a lot of times is fleeting, right? You come up with an idea, or you have you map out a project or something, right? And it's long term. But if you don't consistently show up to work through every single day, put in some time and be able to, kind of overcome the inevitable challenges that are going to come, and, still keep your nose down and keep pressing through to get to the desired end result, whether it's sports or whether it's, carving out a career in whatever industry you're interested in, or finishing a degree or writing a book. Like, it takes time, right? And it takes showing up every single day to be able to accomplish the goal, for sure. So that's the hard part, is consistently doing it, I think.
It is. I would agree. It's the hard part to do it consistently to some extent, but showing up is actually one of the easier things we can do,
Hmm.
right? It just requires me to go.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you know, and a lot of
Yeah.
times we'll whether it's through doubts, fears, whatever, we'll talk ourselves out of even showing up for the first step that could lead to our dream,
Hmm.
right? Because what
It,
if
it,
what if you hadn't shown up?
yeah.
What if you'd
Yeah.
got distracted, or your buddies would have told you, "Hey, don't wash laundry for the football team. That's not cool. Stay here and party." And you'd have
Hmm.
taken that route, right? Like, it's a whole different journey, and that's what I always. That's what Ollie and I've been talking about for years now, is just show up. If you have a dream, figure out, okay, what is the first step I have to do to make this dream possible, and then go.
Hmm.
With the reality, it's
Yeah.
not going to happen in one day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I,
It's a great point.
just showing up. And it's so simple when you hear it, right? But like, when people tell me, like, oh, I'm struggling in my career, I'm struggling with my relationship, I'm not where I want to be, the first thing I'll ask them is, okay, talk to me about your attendance.
Hmm.
Well, what do you mean? Well, when's the last time you showed up? Where were you? Were you early? Were you prepared? Just like you said, right? Being there at 4:30 in the morning for a 6 o'clock workout sets the expectation for your athletes. When they show up and everything's lined up, they know there's a certain expectation, and that, so that reminds me of the story in my book about the custodian when I was at the high school, and the principal asked me who's the most important person on the campus. And we went through all these people, and he's like, no, 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 no. And I was like, well, you, right, playing the ego. Nope, not me. And he literally said, it's the custodian. Because if the floors are clean and the lights are on and the windows are clear, everybody that walks in has a certain way to behave because expectation is set for them. It just starts with showing up.
Yeah.
I love that story.
Yeah. That's a good one, for sure.
So Jesse, I want to switch gears here, but before I do, I want to go through some of your career highlights just so our listeners can hear what's possible when you show up, you put in the hard work, and you're able to put your ego aside and do the dirty work, right? Wash the jock straps, clean the helmets, do everything that you did to climb up the career. So you had a 14-year career in the NBA with the Philadelphia 76ers. And then it looks like you got the NBA Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year. That was in 2013.
I did, correct.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And you also sat as chairman for the NBA pre-draft combine testing planning committee. That was for 5 years. What was that like? Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, that's so everybody's familiar, not everybody, but many people familiar with these combine events that a lot of the pro leagues have, almost all of them. It's a talent ID event, right? So you bring a whole group of college or international athletes to one setting, and the entire league descends on one city, and it's basically a big old evaluation session on a bunch of different levels. And for the NBA combine, obviously there's a big on-court component from shooting to playing. And there's a lot of interviews, there's a lot of medical screens, and a ton of other stuff that goes into empowering a team, or allowing a team to make a decision on whether they're going to draft someone or not. The role we played as strength and conditioning coaches, and the committee that you mentioned, is the testing piece, the performance testing and the anthropometric testing piece, where they're measurables, right? And ESPN's done a great job now of putting this, into the public eye, where, whether it's in Luke Oil Stadium in Indianapolis and you're watching the NFL guys run their 40s and bench press 225 pounds 50 times or whatever, like it's in the public eye now, and it's pretty exciting stuff. So my role as the chair was, there was a whole group of strength and conditioning coaches that leadership type positions that we always looked and outlined how we were going to carry out the protocols. Critically important to have accurate data when you're sending it to general managers and sending it to agents and league personnel as a bullet or on a list of items on whether you're going to draft a guy or not. So the protocols matter, and our role and my role as chair was to just lead the group of people that implemented the testing, making sure that it was all executed according to best practice and according to research. And we did that for some time, and we always felt obligated. We felt a responsibility to continually look at the protocols to make sure they're in line with advanced concepts and maybe some of the technology that is developing and that's out there and everything. So that was a big part of preparation for leading up to the combines and everything. But it's a pretty big involved event, and they bring anywhere from 55 to 70 athletes into town. And it's a huge job interview for these guys, right? And one of the first opportunities for them to really show who they are as athletes and as human beings, right? And again, it's all in line and in an attempt to get drafted, right? To be one of those 60 guys that get drafted the night of the NBA draft. So it's a pretty important role, and that committee was the group of people that was involved in overseeing the testing component of that.
Man, what an opportunity there! I bet that was a lot of fun to be chair of that committee and to do that. And now, Jesse, so after over 2 decades in the team sport culture at the top of your career, working with the NBA, working with all the NFL, NCAA. Now you've transitioned and you founded what's called Balance the Bar Initiative, the Balance the Bar Initiative. Can you speak and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the title is a reflection. So the tagline, the description of the company is that in high performance, your true impact is not only in what you know, but in who you are. So now you take the balance the bar concept, and the logo is literally this kind of unbalanced barbell, right? You have a guy lined up and he looks like he's about to deadlift a bar, but one side of it is a lot heavier than the other. And that heavy side represents the traditional path that a lot of high performance practitioners, and I wouldn't doubt some other industries as well, I'm just not familiar with those as much, that the traditional path is to go really heavy on development of what we would call hard skills, right? Your degrees, your certifications, your licenses, your courses to implement a velocity-based training piece of technology, or your courses on how to put together a pivot table to analyze force plate data or something. I mean, the list of hard skill and domain expertise options, right, for high performance practitioners are endless. There's certifications for everything out there. And the traditional path is to focus primarily on those, particularly for young high performance professionals. And that is absolutely necessary. It will always remain the key component to doing really good high level work, whether you're working with a high school athlete or a youth athlete, all the way up through the professional or Olympic ranks. You have to know your stuff. My thing is, let's balance it out with recognition and awareness and an attempt to grow the quote unquote soft skills as well, people skills, interpersonal skills that we kind of started creating, or that, I'm sorry, not creating, but that we've been talking about here. And how do you connect with people? What do you do to establish trust and build a relationship? What is your level of self-awareness to both your strengths and weaknesses and how they fit into the environment in which you're asked to work? how do you communicate, right? Not only to the athletes that you're training, but the strategies of effectively communicating up to coaches and general managers that have unbelievable demands on their time, and making sure you have an effective message that it gets through, and communicating across to your colleagues and teammates, and how do you collaborate and work well with others on big projects. And then you get into professionalism and work ethic and conflict resolution and leadership, and how do you take, it's this whole bucket of skills, again titled soft skills, which is a horrible adjective, right, for how powerful these things are. Nobody wants to ever be associated with anything soft in sports, but that's the name, and we'll go with it, right? It's less of the title and more of kind of what goes into the title for me. And the balance the bar is like, hey, let's do, there's no hierarchy, right? We need to grow our domain expertise and our knowledge, and let's work on our advanced degrees, but let's also build these other skills that really give you a chance to have big impact and have sustained success in the environment you're asked to work in over and over for many years. And that's the balance concept. And that's where when I use the word initiative, it's all brand new. It's getting off the ground. It's less than a year old. I'm not at all the first person that's attempted to call attention to these skills. There's a lot of people out there doing really good work in that space. But my thing is, it's not out there enough, and not enough young professionals recognize that this skill set is one that should be grown and developed. So that's the initiative, to get the message out and to continue to put resources out there that people can grow and benefit from.
Why do you think it's not more common?
I think they're hard to measure. Number one, there's very little objectivity in soft skills. When you complete your 4-year college or your 2-year college or your master's degree, you have something, and it says, I took these classes and I have this knowledge in this area, right? I know how to lead a human resources team, or I know how to be a chemical engineer or an exercise scientist or something. But to this point in time, again, some people are growing this space a little bit, but to this point in time, there's nothing that demonstrates you're a good communicator until you work in an environment and you are now known as a good communicator. And you certainly know the opposite of that as well, right? The ones that are not good communicators, they stand out equally. So I think that's the first thing. I think it's because a lot of them are subjective, and they come with time in certain environments, and they come with maybe years in the game and what you're doing, where you slowly grow these skill sets. It's not as sexy, right? It's not as powerful to say, yeah, I am super self-aware of my strengths and weaknesses, right? But if you do have a certificate that says, I am now, an official, I am recognized, and I am a certified individual in my area of expertise, that's a little more, some more pride comes with that and everything. So
Isn't that interesting?
I think it's a big one.
Yeah, I agree. It's because it's not quantifiable.
Yeah.
I can't quantify how many people you impacted through your positive communication today.
Mm-hmm.
But I can quantify how many people went to this class and passed this test.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But here's the reality. To me, just my opinion, the people that stand out in any field are the ones that have the better relationship skills, because they all at some point have the same technical skills. Right? You get to certain fields, everybody has a degree in that field, or everybody has the same training in that field, been through the same tech school and that, whatever it is. The people that stand out are the ones that simply make people feel better around them. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what industry we're in. Yep. Right? So I love that. And that kind of ties into your book. I'm super excited on your book. The intent is to grow 6 true pro attributes. And then as I was researching this, Jesse, the one that really stood out to me, like there's voice, hustle, leadership, vision, versatility. And I read those. I was like, okay, I get that. I would like to talk about the one in the middle, which I think is huge for our community, and probably why you stand out amongst your peers, is what you titled soul. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about how you view soul as one of the 6 true pro attributes.
Yeah, that one is pretty much rooted in empathy, compassion, right? And this ability to I mean, everybody knows empathy as, placing yourself in someone else's shoes. That is definitely one component of it. But as I dug into the research, right, and the soul part of it is just that's the title I gave to align it with, again, it's a sports centric message, it's a sports centric theme. So call it lateral thinking, call it, just tying a different name to that. But when you dig into it, it's how do you connect with those around you? How does a practitioner connect with the clients or the athletes or the students that they serve or they're trying to teach? And the roots of that are in empathy and compassion. And as I dug into the research, right, and there's a couple of very well-known researchers that dug into empathy and kind of defined it to the world, right? Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman, I believe is his name. I might be getting that first name wrong, but they defined it, right? And there are three components to empathy, as most people have read and understand it and everything. And there's this cognitive component, cognitive empathy, and that's the recognition part of it, right? That's seeing people for who they are, no judgment, right? But everybody has strengths and weaknesses and values and goals and aspirations and interests outside of maybe why you know them, right? I said it all the time. Like, of course, I got introduced to pro athletes because they play that sport, but gosh, a lot of them were unbelievably active in the community, and some of them were musicians, and some of them were producers on movie scripts, and they have all, and great fathers and brothers and sons, and just like everybody else, just like the three of us, they all have interests, right? And when you invest the time to recognize people for who they are, that is a huge critical step in being perceived as empathetic, right, and compassion. So that's the cognitive empathy part of it. And then you move to the one that people know, the emotional empathy, and that's the feeling, that's the being able, you recognize who they are. Now you have the ability, the desire, the drive, the recognition to place yourselves in their situation. A certain challenge happens, maybe it's a conflict, maybe you're viewing an argument between somebody, and you don't just assume, but you take the opportunity and the time to say, okay, how might they be feeling in that situation, right? And you demonstrate your ability to do that regularly. And then the third part is the compassion empathy, right? And that's the movement towards caring, right? You recognize the first two, you see them for who they are, you place yourself in their situation, see their side of it, and then that information leads you to maybe an action, right? And something that demonstrates to them that you actually care. So one of the examples, right, in the soul attribute is taught to the protagonist, right? Nathan Day, his name is a young strength and conditioning coach, and he's sent on this really cool little orientation week where he's taught these 6 attributes from a bunch of mentors at the university, the fictional university. And the person that teaches him soul is she's basically the assistant athletic director in charge of academic support, right? So she leads the whole team of tutors and educational support for the athletes. And she demonstrates, through conversation, just how compassionate and empathetic she is, and how she's a great connector. And she's that person, kind of like an Oprah type, that you just want to open up to her. And that's the character profile that I built around her. But at one point in the conversation with him in the book, she goes over a number of different examples of how staff at the university goes above and beyond to connect with athletes and to show them that they actually care, right? That movement towards compassion, right? And the act of demonstration. And one of the examples is just that I put in there was, again, all fictional stories, but rooted in things that I've heard throughout my travels, right? In 2 decades and being around high level athletes and really high level practitioners and people that have done this type of connection. Of one of the tutors, the academic advisors, that travels 2 hours to attend the jersey retirement ceremony at one of their athletes' high schools. Right. And, if you just look at those 3 examples, right, athlete reached a high level in high school, and somehow the academic support person was made aware that there's this ceremony, but the athlete lives 2 hours away. And the differentiator there is, the ability to see how he would feel. How would that athlete feel first if there was no one there, right, from his family or his support system to be there and share that moment with him? Probably wouldn't feel too good, right? So this academic support person now says, okay, it would probably make him feel really good. I've established this professional relationship with him. I have to help him improve his grades and write this paper and maintain his GPA. I don't have to attend this ceremony, but I think it'd be really cool and he would value that a lot. And it would really go a long way for me to show I care if I attended this, because he was really excited about it when he told me about it. And then take it upon themselves out of their own personal time in the evening to drive 2 hours to attend this ceremony and everything. And it's just one example that I built into the story. But again, I know someone that actually did that. I probably know a few people, but I very much thought of a story from my past, from someone that I knew that did this exact thing, and how valuable and how cared for that athlete felt as she relayed that story to me, and how powerful it was as a connector.
And again, you would say that's a soft skill, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would argue, almost even not argue, but add to that, it's just simply caring.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And sometimes we get in our professional world, we start seeing people for products and productivity, and forget that behind the 9 to 5 is a whole family that loves them, needs them, cares about them. There's all these other interests, like you said. And that's one of the things I always challenge leaders, no matter what industry, is to know your people, right? And to get to understand, why are they there and what do they want out of this? Because we're all here for different reasons. And no matter what somebody says about, I'm just here for a paycheck, I would say that's almost never the case. There's something they need to get out of this. Experience, training, and I love that you put the soul in there, because I think too many times we focus on what you had said earlier, technical skills, certifications, the stuff that's easier to obtain, easier to quantify, but doesn't always improve performance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I love, you're in the NBA space, so I love like Phil Jackson talks. Because he coached the triangle offense with some of the hardest headed, most high level athletes, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. He got them to believe in sharing the ball, and trusting each other. And that's, I love that you're writing about that, because I do think that we miss the opportunity to really impact lives through just what you talked about. That example right there changes a life.
Yeah. And I'll just bring back to the point that you made earlier in the conversation, where, again, in this fictional environment, or call it the true one that I borrowed the story from, that I'm sure there were plenty of people. I'm sure this athlete was beaming to tell people that his jersey was getting retired at his high school. But who's the one that showed up, right? These skills, that movement towards caring and compassion, they're differentiators, and a lot of them seem so matter of fact. It's like, okay, yeah, you should care and be kind to others and all that stuff and everything, but not everybody does it, and not everybody does it consistently. And the ones that do are the ones that stand out, and they're the ones that get recognized, and they're the ones that earn more respect, and they're discussed positively in rooms they're not even in, and they're referred to positions when they come up, and they're the ones that get promoted through ranks and everything, because I keep using the word differentiators, because not everybody goes to the lengths to be strong in these skills, and they're the ones that make people stand out. Yeah.
And I love it because it ties back to something we always harp on and talk about continuously, is make other people around you better.
Yeah.
Right? And think of your athlete in that fictional story. How many people that he or she crossed paths with that had the same degrees as this one that cared, maybe better degrees, higher level degrees, maybe more important positions, higher salary, better benefits than the one that chose to care. Yet the one they will remember forever is the one that chose to care. And I don't care if you're an NBA superstar or you're just getting out of high school and starting your part-time job, anywhere. we can all choose this path, which will empower those around us.
Mm-hmm.
And it will, just like you said, it'll be a differentiator for them. It'll also allow you to stand out as somebody that also develops the technical skills, but they genuinely care. And I love sports, and here's why, Jesse and Ollie. Sports are raw. Jesse, you only keep your job if the 76ers are in great shape and they win games. Right? Like, you know what I mean? There's a tangible result. Like, you could be the greatest coach ever, but if your team can't convert what you're teaching them into wins, we're not going to have jobs.
Yep.
And I think if more of the other industries had the same kind of metrics, like, okay, the people around me, I got to make them better, or I'm not going to have my job. How much more would you give?
Yep.
And that's one of the things I kind of always challenge the students that come through my programs is that, like, it's not about you, it's about them. And I'm going to evaluate your performance on how well they are. You know, because we're in such a selfish society. Everything's about me, 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 me.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, if you want to make a difference in the world, make it about them.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the other attributes that in the book, the leadership part, there's a deep dive into servant leadership, right? And that approach where you lead from behind, that you're constantly lifting others up, and that's the way you lead, and you're empowering others, and you're constantly providing tools and resources and opportunities for growth for all of the people that maybe on an org chart are under you. But the day-to-day is you're constantly lifting them up and making them better, and that's how you choose to lead within your world. And it's a powerful approach. It really is, when done well.
Yeah, and then yeah, I love that, and I think that's fantastic, and something that our community can take away, because and I love, when I was reviewing your book and stuff, looking through, I love the storytelling piece instead of a 6-step, here's how to develop this, because that's more technical, right? That's another one of those things where I read, okay, I got this information, now I'm going to deploy it. And the reality is what you're talking about here is coaching and changing people for the long term. And that's fantastic. So how can people find your book, Jesse, and where would you like them to go for this?
Yeah, for the time being, it's found. You can just go right to Amazon, right, and just search the title. The Intent is to Grow, available in both the digital version, right, the ebook on and the paperback as well. And then developing website, which right now you can just kind of sign on and get onto our email list for all the news and updates and everything, but that's balancethebar.com. And as we continue to plug away at finishing that site, right, there'll be an opportunity to purchase the book on that site as well. So those are the two places right now.
Awesome. Any other social media? Are you an Instagram guy?
You can follow me. I'm probably most active on Instagram. I don't have a big Twitter presence, and probably the same for Facebook. So the place that I choose to kind of put most of my stuff out is Instagram, and that's at Jesse K Wright, JESSEKWRIGHT. And pretty active on there, and both postings, and love engaging with people on direct message and everything, and answering questions and staying active that way too. So please feel free to visit me there. And then if anybody wants to email me directly, they can email the Balance the Bar site, and that's just admin@balancethebar.com.
I love it. Thanks so much for being with us. Just anything, if you could give our listeners one tip when they get done listening to this and are ready to go out and they're ready to change somebody else's life.
Mm-hmm.
Give them one tip that's going to help them get on that path.
Okay. I like practical. I like I can do that right now without a whole lot of thought or effort or time or anything like that. So we talked about soul, we talked about empathy, compassion, and a big part of that is just listening and being present. So I would say to all of your listeners, sometime today, whenever you listen to the podcast, that whatever next conversation you're involved in, maybe it is actually a meeting, a lunch date, maybe it's dinner time, maybe it's just sitting across from your spouse or your partner or something, put your phone down, right? Don't actually be present there make a conscious effort to listen, put your phone aside, don't be distracted, don't worry about what's on TV or what might be on your social media feed or whatever, and be present with that person, and it'll go a really long way. I think you'll probably see a difference within the conversation.
I love it. Thanks so much for being with us today, Jesse. Best of luck to you in the future, and we look forward to seeing all the lives you're going to change out there.
I appreciate it, guys. This was awesome conversation, and huge appreciation and gratitude. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming, Jesse.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.